Well, I think that you're ready to sail this thing yourself. Let's go back to Buccaneer's Den and get the charts that you'll need.
All right, let's go.
Avatar, something very strange is happening.
What is it? What's wrong?
It's the ship. I don't have control of her anymore. Look, it doesn't matter where I steer, we're only going one way. It's like we're being taken somewhere.
Hello, Avatar. I'm glad you're here. Both you and your associate are about to learn the penalty for interfering with my work.
Avatar, tell my daughter that I love her.
Your daughter?
Raven, she...
How very touching. There. Now that he has been dealt with, I have some business with you, Avatar. Blackthorn, you may leave us now. I would like to speak privately with our friend.
But my lord, I feel that...
I said leave us.
Yes, my lord.
He truly is a worm, isn't he? Oh well. I still need him for a while yet. Then I can get rid of him. Now, come over here, Avatar. I have something to teach you. Do you understand yet? Do you see that you can't hurt me? All of your energy, all of the damage that you would inflict upon me is reflected back onto yourself. It's futile, Avatar. You can't hurt me. You can't win. Are you beginning to see the futility of resisting me, Avatar? Why do you struggle so if you can't win? None can stand against me, surely you know that by now. Take, for example, your friends in Skara Brae. It's true that they have managed to avoid the effects of my columns, but that is of no matter. If I cannot turn a thing, I can at least destroy it. If I can't deprive the people of Skara Brae of their spirituality, I will deprive them of their lives. Now, think about that as you ponder your future, hero. Your quest is pointless. You cannot and will not win. Think about it, Avatar. We will meet again.
Avatar! We can sail again. What happened?
A lot has happened.
Well, fill me in.
The Guardian brought us here to Turfin.
Why? What did he do?
He demonstrated that I can't hurt him.
What do you mean?
We fought, but every time I struck him, I hurt myself.
Did you hurt him at all?
Not that I could tell. What do you think that means?
I don't know. It could be magic. Just some kind of trick.
On the other hand, it could mean that he's indestructible.
I do know that if the Guardian is pulling tricks like that, then we must be getting close. We need to keep moving.
I have very bad news. Samhain is dead.
What? But how? Why? How do you know?
He was there in Turfin. I don't know how or why he was there, but the Guardian killed him. He just killed Samhain right there in front of me, and there was nothing I could do about it. I'm sorry, Raven.
I don't believe this. No, this can't happen. It was a trick. The Guardian tricked you.
Raven, There's more that you need to know.
More? What more is there? I don't know if I can handle any more.
You said that you never knew your father?
That's right, he died before I was born.
Raven, Sam Hain was your father.
What do you mean Sam Hain was my father?
It's true. Before he died, he asked me to tell you that he was your father.
I don't know what to think. I'm stunned. I know this much. Now I really want to get that son of a bitch Guardian.
I'm worried, Raven. I'm not sure I can defeat the Guardian.
What are you talking about? You're the Avatar. You can't fail.
I know I'm the Avatar, but he just seems so powerful. He destroyed Skara Brae, for goodness sake.
Hey, it's okay to be worried. You may be the Avatar, but you're also human. Look, you will beat him. I know that you will. And not because you're the Avatar, but because you're the man I love. When I look at you, I know you can't fail. We'll take care of Skara Brae and everything else. I know it'll be hard, but we can do it.
All right. Where do we go now?
Well, I think that you're ready to sail this thing yourself. Let's go back to Buccaneer's Den and get the charts that you'll need.
All right, let's go.
Give us some gold.
The world owes us.
And don't expect us to work. Don't expect us to contribute to your corrupt system.
No, don't expect us to play your game.
Give us your gold.
Hey, give us some gold.
This is ridiculous. I'm leaving.
Here. Hello, friend. What may I do for you today?
Do you have any sea charts of Britannia?
I have just the thing for you. It will cost you 250 gold.
Yes, I'll take it.
Good, you're here. I've been looking forward to this. Now, you just need to relax.
What are you up to?
Oh, I'm just cooking up a little something for you. Now, do you trust me?
With my life.
Good. Then just sit back in the chair, relax, and enjoy yourself. These are just a precaution.
Well, I wasn't really expecting...
Shh.
Whoa, wait a second. What are you gonna do with that?
You said you trusted me. This might sting a bit.
I don't understand.
Don't worry. You will.
Avatar, brother, I see that you're now a member of the guild. Have you come to buy something?
Raven thought it essential to my success in Britannia.
Yes, we're at the top of our field. Being a member will open doors for you, get you into the finest taverns, and attract the most beautiful ladies.
I've come to Britannia to assist Lord British in re-establishing order and virtue.
Why work so hard? Why not enjoy life? Take your boots off. Put your feet up. It seems to me that you are rather naive about the real nature of life.
Perhaps you understand things I do not. Farewell.
Greetings, brother.
Let me see what you have to offer.
Excellent. You'll find that I have quite a varied and eclectic selection. Very well.
Thank you, but I must leave now.
So, how are you feeling today?
Like somebody burned my arms and then jumped.
All right, all right. Hop aboard, lover. Now that you've got the sea chart, you're ready to sail. Here, take this book. It'll teach you everything you need to know about sailing. Of course, I'm happy to take the helm anytime you want me to. Just tell me where you want to go and I'll take you there. As for where we go next, I suggest we look into Trinsic or Valoria. They're both easy to get to from here. Where would you like to go?
Britain.
Welcome, Avatar.
I would like to sell some items.
Thank you. Will there...
Nothing today, good lady.
Goodbye.
Where would you like to go?
Trinsic.
What do you want?
Hello. What's your name, my lady?
My name is Lindonia, and who might you be?
I am the Avatar.
The Avatar? Really? Well, my husband could learn a few things from you. You see, my husband Lucero is a paladin, but ever since the Chalice of Honor disappeared, he does nothing but brood and debate the meaning of honor.
How can I help?
Help? Why do you want to help? What do you want?
Helping people is something that I do.
Do you expect me to believe that? People don't help others around here, and if they do, they want something in return. Well, you'll find that I don't have anything to give you. Oh, it doesn't matter. I've told him 1,000 times that losing that chalice didn't mean that he'd lost his honor. What could you do to help? Please, just leave me alone.
Hold there, friend. I warn you, do not enter the bastion, for it is haunted by restless spirits.
Have you come here for staff training?
Yes, I would like some training.
Return to me when you have gained more experience, and I shall teach you my skill.
I'm busy here.
What's your name?
Everybody in Trinsic knows me. I'm Merrick, the best fisherman in town. Say, you're a new face though, aren't you? Who are you?
I'm the Avatar.
Yeah, and I'm Lord British. Hey, you don't want to tell me your name? That's fine. I don't much care who you are or what you're up to, as long as you're not causing trouble for me. You see, I've got the best racket going in this town.
What's this racket that you have going?
I don't normally talk about this, but since you're not from around here, I might as well. You see, everybody around here thinks that I'm the best fisherman in town, 'cause my catches are always the biggest and best. They think that I'm up before the sun, out there working my tail off, when the truth is, I just take most of Umberto's catch. I work half the day and get twice the fish.
Who's Umberto?
Oh, he's a little pipsqueak down the beach a ways. We had a little competition going for a while to see who could catch the most fish. He was winning, 'cause I don't get up as early as he does. Anyway, I figured why work for all that fish when I can just thump Umberto and take half his catch. Since then, I've been taking half his catch every day.
That doesn't sound very honorable.
So, who cares about honor? Honor is dead, my friend. All I care about is looking out for number one. Got it? I got me a sweet deal here. I got everybody fooled, and I'm making a lot of money without a lot of work. That's all good, and that's all I care about. Now watch that you don't go and tell people and start making trouble for me. Understand?
I've got to go. Farewell.
Yeah, whatever.
How are you today? I thought that I knew all of the paladins around here. Do you need some weapons made, or are you looking to buy some goods?
What's a paladin?
Why, Trinsic is the home of the paladins. They're heroic paragons of chivalry.
What do you sell here?
Oh, I'm a smith, but since I like to work with various materials, I sell a variety of items.
What other materials do you work in?
Oh, anything I can get my hands on, really. I work in metal, wood, and I do some stone carving. I just like working with new materials. The more exotic, the better.
Have you ever worked in Blackrock before?
No, I haven't, but I have seen Blackrock before. I'm pretty certain that I could make something out of it. What did you have in mind?
I want a Blackrock sword.
I tell you what, you bring me, 3 good-sized chunks of Blackrock, and I think that I could make a sword for you.
I have the Blackrock.
Let me look at that. It'll be tough to work with, but I think that I can do it. It's going to take a lot of time, though, so it'll be pretty expensive. I can do this for you for 7,000 gold pieces. How's that sound?
I don't have enough money right now.
All right. Well, let me know when you have enough gold. Is there anything else that I can help you with?
Sorry, I must be going.
Say, you're not that strange fellow that's been lurking around, are you?
Someone's been lurking about?
Oh yeah. Some stranger's been lurking about, snooping into things for about a fortnight. But now that I've gotten a good look at you, I can tell that you're not him. You're bigger than he is.
What is your name?
Oh, my name's Lawrence. I'm the outfitter here. Well, I used to be. I've had enough of working, so I've decided to give it up.
How are you going to support your family?
That's their problem. Those kids are over the age of 10. They should be working to support me.
What about the people? Don't they need supplies?
Oh, I suppose they need supplies, but I don't much care. I've got all that I need, and that's all that really matters to me.
Farewell, Lawrence.
Farewell.
Yes, stranger. What do you wish of me?
Who are you?
I am Lucero, one of the last paladins of Trinsic. The Order, I fear, is dying because we have lost our honor. My brother paladins shocked me at first, but I have begun to question my own honor of late.
How did the Paladins lose their honor?
We, the Paladins of Trinsic, were the guardians of the chalice that was kept outside of the bastion. It was our sigil of honor, and Trinsic's most prized possession. When it was stolen, many of my brethren lost faith and gave up their paladinhood. Now I fear that I may be the last paladin of Trinsic, and even I question my worthiness. A few of us set forth to find the chalice, but most never returned. If only we could find the chalice again, perhaps then honor would be restored in Trinsic.
Does the loss of a chalice truly equal the loss of honor?
In this case, yes, it does. The chalice was everything to us. It symbolized all that we were and all that we cared about. If something that important can be taken away, it brings great shame upon you. How can you have honor when living in shame? Yes, these are sad days for Trinsic. If only we had the chalice again, then all would be better.
Goodbye.
Dishonorable fool! Flee before we destroy you! You are not fit to enter this place. You were foolish enough to lose your honor. Will you be foolish enough to lose your life as well?
It's a sad, sad thing.
To come here, you living weaklings! You are the ones who lost the Chalice of Honor! When the chalice was lost, so was Trinzic's honor. You must pay for this loss.
It's a sad, sad thing. It's a sad, sad thing. It's a sad, sad thing. I apologize for my brother's harsh words and actions, Avatar. Yes, I recognize you. I was alive when last you were in Britannia, and well do I remember you. Unfortunately, my old companions did not. They have decided to punish the people of Trinzic for abandoning the honor that was so important to us. Since I know you to be the Avatar, I ask you to reawaken the honor that I know lies within the hearts of the people of Trinzic. Do this for our memory, Avatar. Do it for Britannia.
I will do all that I can. Have you any advice, Honorable Ghost?
Yes, I do. Learn the mantra of honor. It is lost to all who still live in Britannia. In order to learn this mantra, speak to one who carries it with him beyond the grave. Seek Sir Dupre.
Wait, don't go yet. Where do I find Dupre? How do I speak to him?
Find one who serves honor. This servant will guide you and help you speak to the dead knight that you seek.
Sinovia, get me another mug of that fine beer. And pour one for yourself, too.
You're in high spirits today. Where'd you get the money for all these drinks?
Oh, I found a pile of gold on the ground earlier.
Really? I wonder whose it was.
It was Sergio's. I saw him drop it, but it's mine now.
Well, who am I to argue as long as you're buying the drinks?
May I help you?
What is your name?
Oh, my name is Umberto. Merrick didn't send you over here, did he?
Who's Merrick?
Oh, well, Merrick is another fisherman, a big fisherman. So, Merrick didn't send you here?
No, Merrick didn't send me here.
Oh, good. I thought that he sent you to collect more of my catch, and I don't have any more. Oh, thank heavens. I thought that you were going to beat me up.
Do you give him your fish?
Yes, some of them. He takes about half of my catch every day. Then he goes and sells them along with whatever he catches. Everyone thinks that he's the best fisherman in town because his catches are so much larger than mine. And I get him back, though.
How can you let him do that? Don't you have any honor?
Well, yes, sort of. I know this sounds bad, but it's better than getting beat up. Besides, I save my honor, 'cause I get back at him.
How do you get him back?
Well, we agreed to stay on our own fishing spots. But when I go out early in the morning, before Merrick wakes up, I go and I fish in his spot. So then, I'm catching the fish that he's supposed to catch. So really, when he's stealing my fish, he's really stealing his own fish, and half of what I'm getting is really his fish. See? I get back at him.
Oh yeah, you're really teaching him a lesson.
Only don't tell him, okay? Or he'll come down here and he'll beat me up.
Good savior of Britannia, you must assuredly have heard the news that Trinsic has come to wallow in dishonor. Please help the people restore honor to themselves and the city.
Do you know how I may be able to contact Dupre?
Yes. Seek out Sir Dupre's remains in the Fortress of the Paladins. Take his remains to the Shrine of Honor and place them there upon the shrine. When this is so done, Dupre will come forth and speak with you. Rest assured that Dupre will give you guidance on your quest. Go now, Avatar. Go and restore honor to the city of honor.
I'm busy here.
Sorry, I'll be on.
Good idea.
Greetings, old friend. I see that you are well. I also see that you are once again struggling to save Britannia. The Guardian's grip on the land is strong, and it is still possible for him to win this contest. The struggle will be long and arduous. Therefore, you must remain strong, my friend.
Thank you, Dupre. I'll do my best to live up to your example of strength and courage.
Do not look to me, friend. Look to yourself. You have strength and courage beyond any I've ever known. Now, let us move on. I know that you have sought me out to ask about the Chalice of Honor, the sacred sigil of Trinsic.
Yes, I need to find the chalice.
Indeed you do. Go and seek the chalice in the Dungeon of Shame. There, in a chamber, behind a crystal barrier, will you find the chalice. When you find this barrier, speak the mantra of honor, which is Sun, and the barrier will disappear. Then, you have access to the chalice.
Thank you, Dupre. I must now go to the Dungeon of Shame.
Indeed you must, friend. Walk with the virtues, Avatar.
Who are you?
Trinsic.